We're gonna do our new single. It's called No Matter What. No matter what you
Honestly, this is like the episode I always wanted to do, which is getting into not just the studio music that Badfinger put together, but all of their different live incarnations and tours and gigs. And, there's a lot of material that exists, both recordings of the shows, testimonies of people who were there, memorabilia, photos, all these things. So we want to kind of put that together and tell the story, I think, in one cohesive place for the first time. I figured today we'll do a deep dive, really, of the 1970 era of Badfinger. More than anything else, the reason that Tom, you're here is because I think it's a huge plug for the Badfinger Library, which is really like the whole basis of our discussion. Maybe just to kick off with a preface, it's always hard to pinpoint like where Badfinger starts. And the live career of Badfinger, I think maybe we would open with these four warm-up shows they did in 1969, which is kind of interesting because we know that Joey joined the band in December of that year, public gigs, fulfilling some Ivy's contracts, and then the Apple Christmas party. But there's not really any surviving recordings or concert memories of those gigs. So I think anything else would be speculation. But maybe if you can just like tell us in a couple words, like how do we know that those gigs even occurred?
All of those come from Bill Collins' diary. Following that, we have BBC recordings with Joey, and we know Joey was given two songs to sing lead on, cover songs, because obviously Badfinger hadn't recorded any songs with Joey yet, with him singing. So Joey did Up on Cripple Creek by the band, and he did Someday by Delaney and Bonnie, and he sang that with Tommy.
And that's in parallel with Come and Get It coming out as a single.
Yeah, the Magic Christian music album, they're playing four tracks, I think, in total.
So I guess that brings us to the first UK tour in 1970, which I think, to the best of our knowledge, encompasses 2 months from January 9th, 1970 to March 6th. And it's 25 gigs that we, with some relative high confidence, verify that they played. And during that time is kind of, when they're going off and recording some of these BBC sessions. They're on Top of the Pops a couple times here, right? On the Beat Club, Hits a Go-Go. They're kind of, around the mainland in Europe as well. That's also, I think, the first time they played the Mama Cass show. So what songs do we think that they played? Because
Nothing
obviously
other than what they played on the BBC.
Carry On Till Tomorrow, although they never played that on the BBC. But you pointed out there's that picture of Tom playing acoustic, which that photo is kind of evidence in itself that that was the only song that Tom would have played acoustic on himself.
Yeah, from the Pitney tour. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Then Come and Get It, obviously, Crimson Ship, Midnight Sun, and Rock of All Ages, I think those would be the five Magic Christian. And I think it's really telling that, Midnight Sun probably has one of the longest careers in the live Badfinger set. It starts here as early as, January 70, and it's going to last for a couple of years in their set. And I think that's the reason why both Joey and Tommy kept it in the repertoire, even in their iterations of Badfinger 10 years on, was because it was, really there from the beginning and probably a favorite of theirs to play live here. So.
Yeah, also, it was, I think, pretty easy for them to play. It was a straight four-piece lineup kind of song.
Yeah.
And, nothing complicated, no complicated singing or harmonies or anything. It was just a pretty simple, straightforward rock song. A lot easier than something like Carry On Till Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. That one did not stay in the set too long. Good point. The other thing I think is interesting is the covers that they chose, which I've never really heard anyone discuss in that much detail. But Someday is kind of a duo with Joey and Tommy harmonizing and discovering their chemistry maybe before I Don't Mind, and then Better Days, which had a place like that in the set list. And then Up on Cripple Creek is Joey's solo vocal spotlight because, he didn't write anything on Magic Christian music, so that was his opportunity to kind of present a song to the audience.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive for him to do that, considering all the words to that song. There's a lot of verses to it and a lot to remember. He did a pretty good job on the two recordings we have.
Yeah, and it's a long one too. Like you said, a lot of lyrics, and when the songs are kind of punchier, 3 or 4 minutes, that one goes on a bit. It's also notable here that, well, what are they not playing? They're not playing Maybe Tomorrow. That's not ancient history yet, and it's even on the Magic Christian album, but I don't think they had much interest probably in representing that anymore.
I'm pretty sure they made a conscious decision not to play anything from the Ivies.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
wanted to move forward. with
Yeah.
Joey in the group.
That's true. And all the songs that they're playing from Magic Christian Music are obviously like the new Badfinger songs, not from
Yeah,
uh
they didn't
David Morse.
play any of the older songs that were carried over from Maybe Tomorrow.
So I think of this kind of first tour as like the transition, really, where and I think Pete even said this in some of the interviews at that time. There's one where he says we felt that the original name was too nice, and that they're trying to kind of have this rockier edge, I think, to a lot of their music. It's also the first time when Tom Evans just switched to bass recently, so he's playing different parts from Ron on those same Magic Christian songs. I think he stands out as a bassist more than as a guitarist.
Yeah, I don't think it was that difficult for him to switch over because he was already a guitarist. I think the other way around's probably more
Sure.
difficult.
So on this first tour, I think the only gig that I might call out, because again, we don't have a lot of information on these. February 5th, they play the Cavern Club, which is very significant. And that's, the famous sign of the Beatles played here. It probably raised a lot of the narrative that had been there trailing them already about them kind of being on the Beatles label and sounding a bit like the Beatles. And I have a quote from Tom, I think, from that gig where he says, "We're a first Badfinger, not a second anybody." So I think that overall, this first 25, 30 gigs was successful. It was maybe more of what they had already been doing. But I think having Come and Get It as a tailwind kind of pushing them forward was still a really positive thing. And I think they were kind of determined to continue building on that. That would take us into the second UK tour, which is the Gene Pitney tour. And that's similar in both structure and length, 25 more gigs. This one seems like it's a little bit more tense in terms of, you have one case that I think you captured here about the running order of the different acts on the tour, and that led to some tension, and Badfinger didn't even play one of the shows as a result of that. So you kind of get different fans there on different nights, and I'm sure since the Ivies played with Gene Pitney the year before, the relationships had already evolved. Badfinger had, kind of a hit in their own right at this time.
Yeah, and also they had the fan following already.
I guess I'd be curious to know why they did the Gene Pitney tour rather than booking the gigs on their own. Maybe it was already annual thing that was pre-booked by Bill Collins.
Yeah, probably. It's much better exposure for them.
So then, yeah, we get into some of that US weirdness. So following that tour, which we don't have too much detail on either, they start recording No Dice April 20th with Mal Evans while Bill Collins is meeting with Stan Pauli in New York. So it's a pretty pivotal moment for them. You have a really interesting note on here about them being scheduled to play Ohio on April 24th for their first US concert, but that was canceled.
Obviously, they could have promoted Magic Christian Music, but I'm sure they wanted more material for Joey to be able to play, and they needed
Yeah,
more time. Stan Polly, yeah, that started at the end of the Gene Pitney tour, the last few dates.
it's amazing how
That was
early.
already underway at the end of that tour because Come and Get It was, a huge success. So that's why they were trying to get an American to manage them so they could have more connections.
So then throughout May, they, continue some of the No Dice sessions, and then really interesting performance on the BBC June 1st, where they play I Can't Take It and Believe Me for the first time.
I can't take it. Believe me, if I wanted.
Just after recording those songs. They're not even kind of the final versions that we recognize, but an earlier incarnation of them. And then the week after that, they go to Hawaii, which is, I guess, the first official US show.
Yeah, not to a paying audience, but it was
So,
Capitol Records convention. Yeah, that was an annual thing with Capitol Records.
and they got some exposure from that, I guess, too.
Yeah, at least with all the industry people.
Yeah, yeah. Interestingly, then they go back, they continue working on No Dice for the next few months in the summer, and they start a third UK tour during that time, or really, I guess it's just some live dates interspersed with that, which is 14 gigs, Germany, UK, Netherlands, Belgium, and then Italy is canceled.
They had played in Italy with the Ivies earlier, and they had a really good time and a lot of success there. I think the August 1970 Italy gigs are canceled. I think because they were busy working on No Dice.
I know we had a theory that, I think Mike and Gaynor marry on August 4th,
Oh, yeah,
and there's a
right.
party at the
That's
house.
the other reason.
One thing.
That and the No Dice recording. That
Yeah.
both things contributed to that change.
There's two really notable gigs that I have from that tour, even though it was pretty short. The first one is that German festival they play on June 20th. A lot of big names on there with Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, The Byrds, Black Sabbath, Jackie Lomax. That's a
Yeah,
pretty
that
nice
era was
lineup.
huge for festivals. I mean, that was following Woodstock.
Yeah,
Then you had the Isle of Wight shows, 69 and 70. So
yeah.
that era was the era of those big festivals, outdoor events. One in Holland, festival in Holland, and then later one in Belgium.
Yeah. And that Belgian one, Cat Stevens plays the same day. And there's that little 1 minute snippet of a video that was found recently of them playing My Dark Hour. So we know that that song was at least played on that third UK tour.
Yeah, I'm curious whether when they brought that in, we don't know if they brought that in during the Pitney tour or not. We have no evidence or information about when they started playing that song. That's the first we know of it.
Interesting that that's the one that's recorded too, because you'd think, they probably played Come and Get It. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I,
Wow. I'm sure they filmed the beginning of their set. That's their
decision.
warm-up song that they played.
Pretty cool to go from not having, really any audio from these early UK tours, any video, any newspaper, any of that stuff, to a video of a minute. It's like looking through a peephole and you actually see them on the stage almost in HD because I think it's from film, or it's a really good transfer. It's kind of stunning, that exists. With that out of the way, now we really get into the first American tour. 2.5 months, basically. They play gigs from September 25th to December 6th across 40 cities, 45 gigs, traveling in an old bus with their own PA system, staying at Holiday Inns, kind of, exactly what you picture of a band first doing a US tour.
Occasionally the bus would break down. I mean, and sometimes it would fly, sometimes they would take a car, rent a couple of cars or a van and a truck or something. So it was however they could get around.
I think in hindsight, a lot of this tour is looked at, it's kind of like the magical period, right, where everything was new and things were fresh for them and all of this. But I found it interesting that in one of the one of the concerts, Tom actually introduces "I Can't Take It," saying,
Very relevant to American, long stretched American tours, which really tend to weigh you down to a thin wisp. It's called I Can't Take It.
so he's already kind of aware of the toll that, just getting around such a big country is taking on them. And so the timing of it overall is pretty interesting, right? Because we said the tour's starting end of September, and the album they've been spending the whole summer recording, and kind of the big debut for Joey Mullen and his first non-soundtrack album of Badfinger, it's not coming out until 6 weeks into the tour. It's scheduled for November 9th. I don't think there were pre-orders at that time, so it's hard for them to move product for those first 2 months, right?
Unless they didn't know how long it would take to get the album released. Could have been planned for Magic Christian Music, so it's kind of overlapping a little bit. The single
Yeah.
was released earlier, so that's not quite as bad
Mm,
no matter what. And Carry On Till Tomorrow is on the flip side, so there's your overlap between the two albums.
that's true. I guess that's a good point. That's kind of what I'm wondering is if this tour was booked and they didn't even know which album they'd be promoting, but they ended up playing 8 out of the 12 songs from No Dice live, right? So that's pretty good representation. I guess by the
Yeah.
time they were actually playing the dates, they knew that this album was imminent.
Yeah,
So
those songs were fresh because they, just recorded them, so they already knew how to play all those songs.
and I think they feel fresh for that reason. I think this set list is probably the most flexible, maybe, of any of the Badfinger tours that we go through, right? Where they really did kind of swap in and out of songs. And I think a big part of that, right, was just based on whether or not a piano was available and how that affected
Yeah,
which
exactly.
songs they brought in.
Their encores were more interesting. They had more variation in the set list for the encores, much less predictable than later.
It does seem like they're already starting to extend these songs into, longer extended guitar solos and doing dual guitar work between, Pete and Joey. And so
Mhm.
I think that was probably already pretty apparent from that tour.
Yeah, at least with Feeling All Right. 8 to 10 minutes could stretch out a little bit.
That's the big one, yeah. November 27th, 15-minute Feeling All
Oh,
Right.
the,
The
oh,
longest one
15.
ever. Joey's already finding his counterpoint to some of Pete's playing, which is just great. The other commonality I see in a lot of these shows is the banter. They're still finding their footing, both as a band, but probably more so to an American audience, which was just really different than anything they'd experienced. And it almost feels a little bit awkward. Pete would probably talk the least, and sometimes he would even ask the audience to like keep it down so he could, start playing Word for the Bell.
If you could just help me with this one, because it's a really quiet thing to do, so just for this one number. Okay? Too much.
It was a transition, definitely, because with the Ivies, Ron did most of the stage banter, and now they didn't have him, so Joey had to pick up a lot of that. And Tommy always talked on stage, but Joey picked up where Ron left off and had to get comfortable. It took him a little while, and some of the banter with the audience was interesting because the fans had trouble understanding the Liverpool accent sometimes.
Yeah, and I think the band had a tough time kind of understanding the audience's expectations, right? Because they would say like you can clap and things like that, where maybe the dynamics had been a little bit different in the UK, right? And I think the American audiences were probably informal about the way that they see those rock bands, and also probably less familiar with a lot of their music.
Oh, come on, clap your hands. Just clap your hands. Come on, that's a good...
And also, they didn't know a lot of these songs yet in the early part of the tour because the album wasn't
Oh yeah,
out,
definitely
so.
all brand new. They just
Yeah.
probably went there to hear "Come and Get It." Beatles connection. They were often advertised as Paul McCartney's band or George Harrison's band, or
Right. And then how about the opening bands here? Like, what can you tell? So yeah, they have country singer Denny Brooks and then the comedian George Stevens in some cases. How did that get booked for them?
just a booking agent put that together.
Okay, well, so let's maybe jump into an example of the set list. That's what I was thinking we could do, and then we'll maybe call out just a couple highlights of the tour. So we already started. We mentioned My Dark Hour was the opener. I think you're right that part of that is probably that it's like relatively simple and straightforward. I think it's also a little heavier maybe than what people were expecting when they saw the band, if they knew Come and Get It and Carry On Till Tomorrow. And so I wonder if they were trying to project some of that heaviness already. And then from there, they would Midnight Sun, and Tom Evans would really scream on that sometimes. It seems like he was warming up his vocal range.
Well, sometimes they had a little bit too much to drink or something,
Yeah.
and kind of oversang.
I think it would come out in those first two songs if they did, yeah. And then Better Days. They're kind of handing it off because they're all singing at this point, right? If you're seeing them live, by the third song, you're seeing Tom, Pete, and now Joey sing. I mean, they are remarkably consistent with these. I have one version where Tom is singing over the outro of Better Days, which I thought was notable. Then fourth, so they start playing Believe Me at the beginning of the tour. The only version we have, I think, is from October 22nd. And they do it in a jam with You Can't Always Get What You Want, which is really breaking the mold. I don't know if that was totally improvised or what.
I'm sure they must have rehearsed that.
Yeah, I always find that one interesting because obviously, like that's in the mold of Tom Evans doing, Maybe Tomorrow and kind of these bigger crooning ballads, but with a rock edge to it. And they played it on that TV appearance around this. I guess that was early next year. Right? It was the Top of the Pops, I think, 71.
Yeah, that's early 71.
It's just interesting, I guess, to me that I guess by Top of the Pops 71, it was still something they were promoting. It was a standout song, probably Tom Evans' standout song from No Dice that features him, and they drop it from the set pretty early in the tour.
Yeah, I wonder if some of it had to do with Believe Me was originally intended as the B-side to No Matter What. That could be one of the reasons. And also, Tommy needed a song to sing, obviously.
Fifth, they do I Don't Mind, which is kind of interesting because obviously that's a nice kind of iconic song with Joey and Tommy, and they drop it in the middle and I think bring it back in 74. So it also had a long shelf life in the band's live career starting here.
That was an interesting song because when I first heard that song, it reminded me a lot of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, who were really popular at that time.
which is tough, I think, in this set list with this band kind of tucked between some of these rockers to get that ambiance. Maybe Believe Me was part of that, and that one they just weren't able to do. But there's a nice little pocket here, I think, of I Don't Mind, Blodwyn, and Word for the Dark. Like it is a nice little acoustic pocket. 6-1 was Blodwyn, which Tom would announce it as a country western thing, and Joey would say like, "Don't look so fed up."
Valley knows the way I feel today. Oh, don't look so fed up. Take my screws. It's not that
I don't know if it was actually a snoozer with the audience, or they had a bad reception, or they were just maybe self-conscious or insecure.
I don't know. Sometimes Pete seemed embarrassed by it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was so different than their other material. That's why. Welsh thing, it's not, the Americans didn't understand what a love spoon was, so they kind of took it the wrong way and thought it was drug related.
Well, yeah, so that's something I noticed too, is that Pete very earnestly tries to explain it.
This is all about love spoons. I don't know if you ever heard of love spoons, but they make them in Wales. It's like an ornamental spoon which you give to your girlfriend as a proposal. Stupid, really.
He kind of acknowledges it's just too esoteric and just gives up and plays it in some of the other
The
shows.
Americans just didn't understand it.
And then that gets into 7, Word for the Dark. That goes over really well. That's also kind of a spotlight for Pete. I do think they add a little bit to flesh it out, though, with the live performance. So Joey obviously solos over it in the intro to add a little bit of live flavor, and then Tom adds a lot of harmonies at the end because obviously it's missing the brass that would be on the recording. So I think that gives it a little bit of a foundation, too.
And also, when they played that song, they would put a spotlight, I think, on Pete on acoustic.
Towards the end of the tour, after the song, Joey goes, very dramatic. So I think he found a lot of Pete's songs to be more dramatic, and he just wanted to do, or he was used to doing rock and roll.
Very dramatic, very, hey, what? Actually, Shakespeare asked us,
I do think it's one of the hardest transitions. They go from that, Word for the Dark, acoustic, very kind of quiet ending, into Feeling All Right, which this is exactly why I want to do this episode, because this is what you miss if you just listen to their studio album. They were a completely different live band, and this song is really representative of that. You have a 10-minute jam after a poppy acoustic song.
And that worked out perfectly for them because that allowed Pete to switch his guitar. Joey would start off the song as the only guitarist, time to plug in his electric and then join in.
You hear Tom on bass, right, just doing that riff, and then Joey kind of noodling around, and then by the time Pete joins him, it really starts going along. So I think it was great. The audience didn't have to wait for a set change or anything like that. They could just go into it. And you can tell the difference in their playing because Joey is really all over the place and rocking out, and then when Pete comes in often, especially on the middle solos, there's just so much precision. It's not the same on any occasion. All right, that takes us to then I Can't Take It. It was good enough to open No Dice, but it's not good enough to open the live set. I don't know why they went with My Dark Hour.
No, My Dark Hour was easier for them to get warmed up, and also for the get the mix proper for Fergie or whoever was mixing the sound.
Makes sense.
I Can't Take It would have been kind of difficult to get,
Yeah, it starts 100 miles an hour. That's true.
Yeah, you need to get warmed up to play that one.
And then they go into, No Matter What is usually next. So the only thing I find interesting on here is Joey is already doing the kind of the double stops when he's playing the guitar solo. That's the way he kind of played it, his whole life. So it's cool to see it right away. I mean, the single's not even out yet, and he's playing it that way. I'd listened so closely to every one of these just to see, because Pete was like a jukebox. Like, he could just play the song almost the exact same way, day after day after day, no pun intended. I just noticed on like 2 occasions, he adds a little bit of glissando when he sings at the last chorus. a little bit in there. Maybe he was experimenting with it, or that's the only inconsistency I think I found in the whole song on the whole tour.
They always wanted to sound, reproduce the record. That's what the fans expected.
Then they go into Crimson Ship in a couple occasions. I think this actually sounds great live. It's interesting they opened it with the chords. The intro is almost like Money. I'm surprised they dropped it because I believe there are some occasions where they play Come and Get It and not Crimson Ship. I could be wrong.
They really needed two guitars and a keyboard, so it was kind of hard to reproduce
Yeah.
like the record.
And there is that one occasion where it's kind of confirmed, right? I think Tom mentions that it's about the time with Paul McCartney.
It's a thing we wrote about our experience with secret undercover agent PM.
Yeah, the Crimson Ship was Paul McCartney's car.
Yeah, so that didn't probably help with the Beatles association and everything if that was weighing on them. But all right, so then they'd follow that up because I guess they're on piano already. They would go straight into Come and Get It. They're already extending the pause at the end, letting the audience bask in that uncertainty for a moment.
Sometimes they had some really long pauses.
That takes some guts, I think, to do that with an audience that, and especially their favorite song that they're there, like you said, they're buying the ticket to see that song and you're kind of messing with them. It is more guitar driven too, which I like. It definitely chugs along a bit more, just given the mix and things on certain nights. And you also hear Pete's low harmony really well on some of these live recordings, and I mean, he kills it. It sounds great. And then they would wrap up the official set list with the medley. So Love Me Do, Lucille, Rip It Up, Long Tall Sally. And I like the way they would take Love Me Do, which is obviously an original Joey song from No Dice, and kind of mix it in with these rock songs.
They mix in with a bunch all Little Richard songs.
Yeah, and it fits. Honestly, it works. And then everyone gets a chance to sing, right? So Joey sings that, Pete sings Lucille, Tom takes the last two, and so even though you're right, it's kind of all one song, it gives everyone a chance to.
Because Tom used to do Long Tall Sally with the Ivies, so they already were familiar with it. And that being the closer didn't help either with the trying to get away from the Beatles connection. The Beatles always close with Long Tall Sally.
And so then I guess occasionally they do different encores afterwards. We said Johnny Be Good, Roll Over Beethoven they did on at least one occasion, and then Suitcase, which I think we'll get into. Maybe just going through a couple of the key gigs. I guess, the first gig I mentioned is September 25th. The review is not good. I mean, but, it acknowledges they appealed to the audience and wanting to sincerely give them something.
Depending on who was writing the review, or if it was somebody that didn't know them, or whether it was somebody that was already a fan of theirs, that made a huge difference. I mean, some people expected them to be the Beatles, which was impossible. They never could, live up to that.
October 11th is famously when Tom Evans' Aunt Grace, who lived in Illinois, came to the gig in Dixon with 4 cousins. And so there's a lot of cool pictures and everything of that gig. October 16th, they're in Minneapolis, and I think Joey is interviewed on Dick Powell. He actually meets Kathy. I assume it was on, that date or the next in Minneapolis. Just looking at the trajectory of some of these dates, it's pretty weird, right? So on October 22nd, they play in Texas, right? And they've kind of gone there from Colorado and different areas. And then they go back to North Dakota again, which is where they started the tour a month ago. Then they go to New Mexico, back to Nebraska. There wasn't a lot of logic applied to at least the path they were taking, but it's where they could get the gigs.
Yeah, maybe they kept adding things, or people requested them, or the weather. They had to reschedule things. Or I remember listening to the interview with Jeff Franklin from ATI talking about how it was competition. They had to keep changing dates around. Different acts kept getting moved around, different schedules, and so constantly moving things.
November 7th, they play their 3rd show with Black Sabbath that year, which is pretty incredible. November 10th in Depew, there's a very interesting concert memory that says they played No Matter What 3 times, meaning they played it twice as an encore. Unsubstantiated beyond that, but anything's possible. Maybe they played it once at least.
It does say they got a rave reception, and it was a high school too, so
Yeah.
it would have been easier to do something like that.
If there was going to be kind of one moment from this tour that everybody knows, which is the Ungano show, play on the 24th and 25th of November, I think on your fake background there. And George Harrison was obviously doing a lot of promotion. He even sat at the front table and introduced them, although we don't have a recording of that. Yeah.
But I have photos of that.
Oh,
There's
really?
a photo from behind the band taking a picture of the audience. You can see George and Patty and Pete Bennett and Alan Klein sitting at the table.
They're playing a little club outside New York. I think May Pang was also there.
Yeah, she has just started working for Apple. Yeah.
So a lot of folks there, it's a club show. So they really messed with the set list. They opened with Johnny Be Good, which was typically the encore. He didn't play Come and Get It at this gig, probably because there wasn't a piano. But again, kind of this is their single hit. I mean, no matter what is going up the charts, but they're not playing the other one. And this is where they break out Suitcase for the first time that we know of. I mean, it's possible before this, but we have this little snippet of dialogue where Joey says in the intro to My Dark Hour, he says, you hear him go, we'll do Suitcase.
Do you want to do Suitcase? Thank you. Now, we've been on this grueling tour of America for about 9 weeks now, and we're just really wiped,
Looking at the other band members. So, maybe this was kind of their testing of the song. And
Yeah,
I love the
that's
story that George hears that and goes, hey, maybe I'll produce that in a year, But
That would make sense if Joey said that. That would make sense that it's the first time.
it seems like there had been some intentional decision to bring in slide guitar. Because Pete's also playing slide guitar on Johnny Be Good, which I don't think he does in the encore of the other shows. It's going to become a pretty signature sound for him. So,
Yeah, definitely New York City was be the place to get the most exposure, the most attention. And also, Apple, their office was there. So
yep.
that was like their home base when they went on tour.
Yeah, and they make the most of it, right? Because I'm sure they had a lot of meetings there as well, but they do the big interview with Al Bennett while they're in New York, I think the next day or two. Then November 28th is the last recorded show we have from that tour. And they play an encore here that is kind of unexplainable, right? After everything that we've just talked about, they play Walk That Road. Is this an original? Is it improvised? We can debate it. It's a medley with Matchbox, which obviously is a cover. Yeah, Tom, what's your take on Walk That Road? Or what do you think?
I don't know. I still believe it had to be rehearsed. It's too polished to be something like improvised. If it is, Pete Ham is unbelievable. Wonder if it's something they did in rehearsal, like maybe when they were at Unganos or rehearsing for Unganos, maybe it's something they rehearsed. And
it's just amazing because, again, they've played so many shows on this tour, and this isn't the last show on the tour where sometimes people really get unhinged and, do whatever. But, they're breaking out, the second part of this, they also play Rock of All Ages, which is the only recorded time that the original version of Badfinger played that live, and Good Golly Miss Molly. So they're completely changing the encore. Which leads me to believe that that's also an original mix with a cover song. So maybe this first Walk That Road with Matchbox is also an original with that cover, but where did it come from? How could it not be mentioned anywhere? It's not recorded on the next album like Suitcase. It's not something that, was a classic blues song that was maybe reinterpreted. It seems completely mystifying. I've never really heard it discussed of this is potentially, a Ham original song that just doesn't really get the credit and placement it deserves in the rest of his, discography. So,
like I said, he could have just made it up. I mean,
But you're right, it's very structured.
Musically, it's standard blues playing. He could have just made up the words. It's possible.
Yeah, he didn't. I don't feel like Pete was that comfortable improvising words usually,
He
especially
did
if
a
that's
lot of his
true.
demo recordings. He did things
true.
like that.
Yeah, this would be the only case that we know of where he improvised to a live audience vocally, and it would be the only time that a song was only performed live. I mean, the Beatles have "I'll Be on My Way," which was the only version was performed live. They never did a studio version, right? So it could be similar to that, where this was just, this is the only Badfinger song that was only performed live and never recorded.
With Rock of All Ages, I'm sure they played that in other shows. We just don't have a recording of it.
Probably. I do wonder if they did in that medley. And I think the other notable thing on this show, by the way, since this is after Ungano, is they took out Suitcase. So pretty interesting to bring in that song and work on the arrangement and play it live and then remove it and bring in a different new song, So they were really kind of playing around with this set list quite a bit. So that's it. Yeah, we don't have any of the other performances here. And the tour ends December 6th in North Carolina is the last known show. There's an interview with Mike that is available on his YouTube channel that was from December 1st. I mean, that's the band's first US tour. Pretty significant, a lot of great recordings of it, but I think really kind of an evolution, right, into who they would be. Every time I hear a venue from this early version, it sounds like they're still in their infancy as a band and finding their footing. It's strong. The performances are great, but still early days.
And from here, they went back home for Christmas, and then following New Year's, they started recording their next album.
The other reason it's kind of a golden period for them, it's all fresh. It's also that No Dice was fairly unadorned with, extra production and symphonic stuff. And so it lended itself really well to the stage. I think, as you pointed out too, they could recreate those songs really easily. And there was probably some comfort that came with that versus the challenge of recreating the production of Straight Up or Ass or whatever, which they didn't even play a lot of stuff from those albums later on. So I think there's a reason they stuck to No Dice.
And the two songs they did enhance with strings or orchestration, they played them on stage.
Yeah.
Without it, so it worked without it. So
it's probably, I think, the closest they were. Even though the set list was very flexible and everything like that, but I think Badfinger Live 1970, Badfinger in the Studio 1970 are probably the closest together in that, that starts to really diverge, I think, by 72, 73, what you hear on a Badfinger record compared to what you're hearing on the stage. It's already different here, Feeling Alright and things like that we've talked about, but probably the most similar it's going to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's what they wanted to maintain. Unfortunately, the Apple and the record companies wanted more polished albums.
Well, I'll be very curious to know what other people think, because again, like I said, I don't think we've ever shined a spotlight on 1970 like this. So it'll be interesting, kind of in the Badfinger community, what folks think of this era. And so many of these songs are now available on YouTube and kind of everywhere else. So you can get a taste of what they sounded like at that time.